All right, I have fired up Battlefield 6. Apparently I'm being shot while I start recording, so let's just go prone and not help anyone. And what are we doing in this video? We are testing out some of the recommended minimum ultra plus PCs in the specs sheet and seeing if we get the kind of performance that they said we would. And so I'm starting out on the recommended system, which is an RTX 3060 Ti, and I've got the closest CPU I could find to the performance level of a i7-10700 or a Ryzen 7 3700X. I'm using Ryzen 5 5600X. So it's a 6-core instead of an 8-core, but is one generation newer than the Ryzen 7 3700X. And, is a similar age and performance-ish level to the 10700. It's not an exact match, but it's kind of the ballpark. And that's where we're at. We are at 1440p native resolution at the high settings, and I should probably pay attention to what I'm doing here. And there's some enemies, guys. We got to shoot them, even though we're trying to benchmark. We are also trying to play the game. All right, looks like we'll see if anybody revives me while I talk a little bit more about this. So notice that we do have native resolution, 1440p 60 high settings. That's what I'm currently targeting. We can also check how we'll do at 1080p. They're saying low settings, 80 FPS or so. So we'll have to kind of see what we get with all of that. Now, let's switch back over to the gameplay. I did not get rezzed by my team. So if we lose, it's clearly their fault. And let's go ahead and keep on running. And that's an enemy, so I should probably... Wow. Okay, we're just going to ignore the display of fine aiming skills here. But again, I do also want to double check the settings that we're at. So we are at graphics settings, 1440p. We are at native resolution. We are at high settings. Let's see, you have to go to advanced to look at the upscaling. Upscaling is turned off. So that's where we're at here. Now, looks like I did get rezzed this time. I just reset the frame rate averages. There is a vehicle. All right, wonderful. Anyway, the average frame rate is around 74 right now, but you can see the CPU cores are working pretty hard as well. We're kind of 70 to 80% utilization on all my CPU cores. It's looking like I'm not going to get rezzed this time around. But the GPU is still up in the upper 90% utilization range, indicating we are, for the most part, GPU limited, although the CPU is working pretty hard as well. I don't think we can get to a much higher frame rate because of the CPU. So even if we make things easier on the GPU here using something like DLSS, I don't think we're going to get a significantly better frame rate. That was an enemy right there. That's an enemy right there. And there's an enemy somewhere else, which is shooting me. And okay, maybe I could try to get some better gameplay, but I do want to test out using upscaling because my suspicion is we'll get a bit better performance, but not a lot better performance because we're going to start running into the CPU limits. So I'm going to switch over to DLSS quality, and we're going to see how that goes. So DLSS quality. Let's see, let's spawn in on my squad mate here. And okay, frame rates are a bit better. We're kind of into the mid 80s now, but we were already kind of in the 70s before. GPU utilization is still showing around 95%, but now it's dropping around like 91% at times. And if you look at the CPU usage, notice it's up in the like 90+% range. I should probably pay at least some level of attention to the gameplay, guys, I know. Anyway, but what I'm trying to say is, we're showing signs of being CPU limited here. And I'm going to spawn in on E and see if I can help out. Anyway, so yeah, it's looking like we're definitely right on those borderlines of CPU and GPU limited on this. Now, to emphasize this point, I'm going to go ahead and upscale even more aggressively. We're going to go all the way to performance mode upscaling. And what I'm expecting here is to see similar frame rates, maybe slightly better than what we were just getting, but with the GPU usage lower, indicating that the GPU is waiting for the CPU. So that's what I'm expecting to see, especially as we get in with more enemies in the area. So yeah, we're still seeing that our frame rate's kind of in the 90s, GPU utilization is dropping into the 80s, and the CPU usage is showing pretty high on cores. Now remember, if you have a bunch of cores, it might not show all of them being utilized. If any core is the limiting factor, you are CPU limited. The game can only perform as fast as those cores. Now, I am seeing some enemies in this area. What class even am I? I've got the little shotgun thingy. Maybe I should run in here and shotgun some enemies, except those weren't enemies. That was an enemy. Okay, I did a thing, guys. Let's can I res a teammate, or we got medics already doing the job. All right, so let's do the things. Okay, that's enemies in a helicopter, but I don't think my machine gun does much against the helicopter. So let's go ahead and just keep rolling around. But yeah, I'm thinking we are pretty much seeing the performance limits. Again, why can't we get better performance right now? And why is that guy out of range from me? Gotta get in closer here. Let's get out the shotgun. Let's shoot some enemies. I'm contesting a point. I am missing. Do I have a grenade? I do have a grenade. All right, where are they at? All right. We are doing the thing. He's hiding in there, but we have... Oh no, we're losing the point now. Oh, I suck. All right, okay, got distracted by actual gameplay there for a second. What are we doing? Well, let's go ahead and change the graphic settings. So let's drop down to 1080p resolution. And we'll do that right here. So we can drop to 1080p resolution. And we are going to turn off upscaling. So 1080p resolution, we'll go to native resolution by turning off upscaling. And away we go. All right, spawn in on some teammates, get some gameplay. Also, I don't think my mouse... Oh, man, I can't spawn in on them now. Let's see. I don't think my mouse sensitivity is quite where I want either, but whatever. Okay, so we're at native 1080p resolution, high settings, and as I was expecting, we are CPU limited for the most part. You can see the GPU utilization is the best way to tell. If your GPU is not close to 100% utilization, we're talking like mid to upper 90 percentile range, then we are mostly CPU limited because the GPU is waiting on the CPU. It's harder to tell by looking at the CPU performance because a lot of times you wouldn't be using all the cores. On this particular CPU, which is 6-core 12-thread, we are using the cores and threads. But just a reminder, you check the GPU usage, which right now I'm noticing is bouncing between the mid-80s to around the 90s, indicating we are CPU limited performance-wise at 1080p high settings on the 5600X. Now, for somebody with a 3060 Ti, this is fairly good news because the GPU could actually perform better if I turn like use upscaling more aggressively, etc. It's just going to depend on the CPU that you have. So this is bad news if you've got a 3060 Ti but a weaker CPU, right? But I think what we can confirm is that the system requirements for the 3060 Ti do indeed actually seem to be right in that kind of ballpark, which is good. Also, though, they had suggested potentially going down to low settings at 1080p to chase higher frame rates. And I think that it's worth doing that because I noticed, at least in the beta, and let's test if this is still the case, changing to the low settings does increase CPU limited performance. Now, also it's best practice to restart the game when doing this, just to be clear. But most of the settings do apply without restarting the game. And you can see that performance did go up. We're now in the triple digits. So we are in the triple digits performance-wise on the 3060 Ti and the Ryzen 5 5600X. Now, moving into more enemies in the area, you can see performance drops a bit, and we're very CPU limited right now. Because again, reducing the graphic settings does reduce some of the CPU burden, but it most graphic settings are more GPU focused. So we've become even more CPU limited, but our frame rates are now sometimes breaking 100 FPS depending on what's going on the screen. I don't know this map, guys. I'm just running around. So yeah. Anyway, that's where we're at here. There's, again, nothing I can really do to increase performance here other than get a better CPU. So that's going to be that. Now, potentially RAM speeds could be another good thing to look at. So you could look at like CPU overclocks, RAM overclocks, timings, etc. So you can do all of that. Let's try to take this point. Looks like no enemies at the moment. So maybe this is a good place to switch over to 1440p again. So now we're looking at 1440p low settings. Again, at least the low settings that we're able to apply without a restart, which is most of them. And you can see that frame rates didn't change much going up to 1440p. Again, because resolution doesn't have much effect on what the CPU has to do. It affects what the GPU has to do. So we've made things more demanding on the GPU, but the GPU is mostly waiting around for the CPU anyway. I'm getting shot from up above, so I'm going to try to zigzag around, dive for cover. Okay. I want to just play the game, guys, but I'm trying to get you some benchmark content first. So what you're getting is distracted gameplay, which is, I guess, probably entertaining in its own right. I saw an enemy in here. I'm going to pull out the shotgun. Is there an enemy in here? Guess my teammate already cleared it out. All right. Where are we at, guys? Okay. Oh. Guess he's already dead. Somebody got him. All right. So again, for at 1440p, low settings, native resolution, we're mostly CPU limited. I can try kicking on, maybe I should go prone to maybe not die. I could try kicking on some upscaling before we change GPUs just to get a good look at that. So I will kick on DLSS and we'll go like balanced mode DLSS. Now, why am I doing this? Again, just to see if we can push a little more performance, because we were kind of on the borderline between CPU and GPU limited. So at the times we were more GPU limited. This will help a little bit, but not a lot, because we are mostly CPU limited. Again, right around that 100-ish FPS mark. Now, it's also should note that in the open beta, which I tested out more than I have the live game, this is literally my first game of the live full launch game, the CPU limitations varied from map to map. So it's possible that this same setup on other maps would become CPU limited at higher frame rates or at lower frame rates. It just depends on the, oh man, I needed to reload. Again, not paying enough attention, guys. Oh, and I totally whiffed my shotgun shot there. Oh well. All right, I think we should check out a lower end system. So I don't, I've already tested the 2060 in the open beta. So I think it might be interesting to actually try lower than that. So what if we actually go into a GTX 1070? I tested 1060 in the beta as well. So I just tried something I haven't tested on the channel yet. Let's try out a 1070. All right, I have just fired up a match on the GTX 1070. And remember, this is below the minimum requirement for the game, which is listed as a 2060. But you know what? We're gonna go ahead and see how it goes. We are at the low preset, and because the game has restarted, this is now completely applied the low preset, but we're at 1440p and native resolution to begin with. Actually, wait. It looks like we're on balanced upscaling. Let's go to native. Wait, oh no, it is off because upscaling is off. So it was set to balance, but it's off, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, so we're off on upscaling. So this is native 1440p resolution at the low preset on a GTX 1070. And I'm dead. So there's that. That's what I get for riding in on a teammate's vehicle, hoping they don't do something stupid. While I try to tell you what I'm doing. Anyway, so I guess I could have been paying more attention. Let's restart the frame rate counter. Looks like we are actually in the 40-something FPS range. I've tried to queue up for the same map, I believe, in game mode, because it does allow you a custom search, and you can turn on and off different maps, etc. No, it is, well, the CPU is working hard. This is still the Ryzen 5 5600X because our frame rates are low enough. We are not currently CPU limited. I thought that was an enemy there. Turns out I was right. So I can pay some attention at least to what I'm doing here. Oh, but the guy off on the right got me. So not enough attention apparently. Now, let's go ahead and actually try out, let's say we're gonna stay at 1440p because it's not a disaster. I think if we actually turn FSR upscaling on, I also have XCSS, but we'll stick to FSR, I think. Let's try quality mode and see how it goes. So FSR quality looks like I have been resurrected. So look at me go. Guys, we're getting around 60 FPS on a GTX 1070. This thing is almost a decade old now, isn't it? What did it come out? 2016, I think? I should double check on that. We're certainly below the minimum spec for the game, but we're at 1440p FSR quality at the low settings. And honestly, guys, the low settings don't look that bad. There's also some enemies right here. So I'm going to attempt to pay some attention to... Oh, no, I was going to say I was going to try to not suck for a second, and then I immediately throw a grenade at myself. But I don't think there's friendly fire, so maybe it worked out okay. Now, is there an enemy right on the other side of this vehicle? That's the question. I thought there was. Maybe they're already dead. Maybe that was a teammate. I'm going to move in with my vehicle. But yeah, we're holding around 60 FPS here. That is interesting. That is an enemy, and I need to judge the range of my shotgun. Different games are kind of different on the shotguns. I got a double kill, but there was somebody behind me. So, oh well. Let's go ahead and change graphic settings because honestly, if we go down to DLSS balance, sorry, FSR balance, we don't have DLSS on GTX cards. They do not have the tensor cores. So none of the machine learning inferencing acceleration, but we can do the FSR. All right, we're gonna try out balanced. I got a little bit of a frame rate spike right as I was running out here. Just saying, but now that I'm actually in motion playing, seems to have leveled out. Let me go ahead and reset the frame rate counter just to get that 1% lows out of there. So there was a minor frame rate blip right as I started moving after respawn. So that's worth noting for the performance testing of the game. But yeah, FSR balance, 1440p output at low settings. And honestly, the low settings don't look that bad, guys. We are getting 70 FPS average here. 1% lows in the mid 50s. This is totally fine. In fact, it's so fine that I can't blame that death on on the frame rate. However, I can blame it on I was about to change graphic settings because it seemed like we were fine there. But then the enemies showed up. So, oh, no, I'm getting resurrected. Okay. Can I get out of the menu in time? I came out of the menu in time to get a kill, and now I'm going to run behind cover. Okay, guys. We were going to change graphic settings, but we apparently need to deal with some combat here first. All right. That's an enemy. Switch weapons here. He's too far away from my shotgun. All right, that was pretty amazing gameplay. Now, on that note, let's go ahead and go to FSR performance. This is gonna look a little pixelated, but I'm quite curious how this ends up. Because again, 1440p monitor output, I know it's not native rendering resolution on a GTX 1070. That's just really cool. Man, the CPU is working hard here as well. I will mention that. We're in the mid 70s. Things are looking a little pixelated, but it's playable. This is not a I'm not like sightseeing in a single player game. I want the frames. Got a frame rate spike there again though. I will mention that. Let's destroy that thing. Okay. Are we capturing the point? Let's get the point. That's an enemy vehicle, but I am not an engineer right now, so I don't think there's anything I can do about the vehicle. I can do something about that if that was an enemy, but that might have been a teammate. There's too much smoke. I want to revive my teammate. Yeah, those are teammates. Okay. Can I get ya? I'm attempting to actually help the team while benchmarking. It's a difficult balance to reach. Okay. All right. With all of this stuff going on, we're almost feeling CPU limited despite being on the 1070. It's at least pretty close. There are enemies coming in this way. Guys, I'm getting too distracted by the gameplay. Good thing I'm dead now. All right, let's go ahead and switch over to 1080p resolution. So we're going to switch over to 1080p, but I should also turn off the upscaling, so we're at least starting out at native. So 1080p, but we're going upscaling off. So upscaling is off. Native 1080p, we are at the low settings. So 1080p low on a GTX 1070, again, below the minimum spec for the game. And my goodness, this is really more about the CPU. What was that? What is happening What just happened? Was that like internet related? Because there was a dude floating and suddenly I teleported like back through some walls. That feels to me like we just had some, is he a medic? No, he's not a medic. Okay, I'm just gonna respawn. That feels like we just had some internet connection problems. That's fine. Let's go ahead and keep rolling. All right, but yeah, I was gonna say that we're around 60 FPS, but also the CPU gets hammered pretty hard here. So like I said, if you're on the minimum CPU, I think you're gonna be having more trouble here. But the GPU minimum requirement actually seems like overkill, at least based on this gameplay. So, yeah, 60-ish FPS. There's a dude in the window. Oh, now there's a dude at the stairs. Oh, well. Let's go ahead and switch things up. So actually, let's try out turning upscaling on, but we'll go quality FSR with the 1080p output and see what that gets us. I think we still have some headroom on the CPU to boost performance a little bit with FSR. Join my tank right here, I guess. Where are we getting shot from? Okay, I'm gonna just try to take C. It's probably not gonna work. Okay. Where are the enemies at? I've got my shotgun out. Okay, think we're gonna take Charlie, guys. Look at us go. And frame rates are in the mid 70s, but guys, look at the CPU. It's pegged, and the GPU is dipping into the low 90s at times. So we're pretty much hammering the CPU and the GPU right now. They're both kind of hitting their limits, and it appears to be the mid 70s, which is pretty interesting. All right. That guy popped out there. When I was not expecting him, I was gonna change graphic settings. So just for fun, we're gonna go all the way down to FSR performance mode. And I got revived. Look at that. My team is doing team things. And that's an enemy. I just missed 3 shotgun blasts at point blank range. Sounds like a good time to maybe actually test out some other hardware. So if we were going to go ahead and jump into the the bigger GPUs, like, so we're maybe testing out ultra settings here. Looks like we've got a 7900 XTX or a 4080. Now, since I've tested out a lot of NVIDIA GPUs so far, maybe we test out the 7900 XTX next. Now, I'm just gonna go ahead and jump to my 9800X3D system because it's not much faster than a 7800X3D, and then I'm already ready to go for this one, and it saves me a lot of time changing out CPUs. Changing out GPUs, not a big deal. CPUs, way more annoying. Anyway, so we're gonna jump into a 7900 XTX and 9800 X3D. All right, we are in game on the 7900 XTX, and I think VSync is on. So let's immediately go check the graphics settings. All right, so it looks like we are at ultra settings, and I'm gonna go ahead and make sure that we got upscaling turned off. So this is currently native 4K rendering resolution. And again, at the ultra graphics preset, and VSync is in fact turned on. So let's go ahead and turn that off. We are at 4K resolution, and let's see what kind of performance we're getting. Looks like pretty good. Again, this is native 4K ultra settings, and just to be clear, again, if we check this specs sheet, that is what it's telling us, is that 4K ultra settings should be 60 FPS on a 7900 XTX, and currently I am over that performance, but again, let's go ahead and play a little bit more, and then we'll try out some other settings, etc. Now, I do want to mention on my 7900 XTX, I have the made by AMD model, which is, how should I put this? Not as fast as a lot of the third-party cooler model versions. The made by AMD model is locked to about 350-ish watts. It might be 365. Whereas a lot of the aftermarket cooler versions can go up to like 400, 450. And also often clock a lot higher. So if your 7900 XTX is like 5 to 10% faster than mine, that is why. I am on the made by AMD model, and I test things at their out-of-the-box settings. I don't know why I just stabbed the door to go through it. That's a mystery. But yeah, we are at 4K resolution and in the mid 80 FPS range, at least on this map. Now, I am trying to play the same map for all of my games. I did notice in the custom search that you can select a particular map and such. So after the first game got this map, I decided to do all of the testing for this video on the same map. I know I saw an enemy run in here. Let's see how this goes. Ah, there's an enemy right there. Okay. I just whiffed that shot so badly. That was not my finest moment, guys. I'm just gonna be honest. But we're getting 88 FPS average on that life at native 4K resolution at ultra graphics set. We're on 4K, guys. That's pretty crazy. So if we do go to the advanced settings and turn upscaling on, then we could use like FSR quality. I wouldn't want to go super aggressive on FSR since we are already getting a good frame rate, and this is using FSR 3 since we're on a 7900 XTX rather than FSR 4. Looks like just using FSR quality, though, is enough to break into the triple digits here. And we do still seem to be GPU limited rather than CPU limited, considering the GPU usage is high and none of the CPU threads seem to be particularly highly utilized. Again, we're on the 9800X3D here, so definitely high-end CPU to try to keep up with the performance. Also, compared to our NVIDIA testing, oftentimes NVIDIA has a little more CPU overhead related to their driver and such than AMD does. So sometimes if you're on the same GPU but CPU limited on the same CPU, on the same CPU but CPU limited in performance, was there an enemy or something there? I don't know. There's definitely some enemies there. I need to get out of here. I got shot. Anyway, I should have been a little more undercover. Guess there was also a vehicle over there. That might have been what got me. Anyway. So I got revived. I was gonna change the settings, but actually I still will. Okay, so let's go ahead and I will try out going into performance mode on the upscale just to be like, okay, it's a multiplayer game. I'm more interested in how well it runs than how nice it looks. So FSR 3 performance mode on FSR 3, like I can tell these power lines are pretty aliased in motion now, like it's not super amazing image quality wise, but it's certainly good enough to play, to see what's happening. And it looks like frame rates are now up pretty high. There's a vehicle out here. I should be an engineer so I can do something about the vehicles, but too late on this life at least. Looks like somebody else took out the vehicle, so there's that. All right, I was gonna say there was an enemy in here, but it does not appear to be the, okay, there is an enemy. All right. All right, that's probably a good time to change the graphics settings. So on the 7900 XTX, let's go ahead and drop the resolution to 1440p. So we'll go to 1440p, but I do think we want to turn the upscaling off. So we'll go upscaling off. So upscaling off, 1440p resolution, native, and let's try to spawn in on my squad here. So native 1440p, looks like we're around 140 FPS, 138, 139. I hear lots of shooting, but where are the bad guys? Are they in this building? I'm going to attempt. Okay, I did see one crossing over there. I'm gonna see if I can get up here. I don't know this map at all. Is there any way through this? Okay, I hear somebody gliding off. Aha! Oh, apparently there was another enemy somewhere. Definitely got me. All right, that was also not my finest moment. Anyway, performance-wise, 141 FPS average though on that life. Let's go ahead and kick on FSR like quality at 1440p. I wouldn't want to go much more aggressive than that. I probably should have just switched to an engineer because I saw an enemy tank, but whatever. Okay, there's definitely some enemies right there. Yeah, the vehicle's getting me. I don't like the vehicle, guys. I do like Battlefield, but I know I don't like the vehicles all that much. So is this the engineer? Which one's the engineer? He's got the rocket, right? I think the engineer gets the rocket. Is my secondary a rocket? I think it's some kind of rocket. Let's find out. Can I edit the loadout? Gadget, whatever. I know you guys aren't here for the gameplay, but is that an anti-vehicle thing? Anti-tank missile system. That seems to be the thing I want. I want to be able to blow up the enemy tanks, guys. This is important to me. Anyway, looks like I have an SMG now, right? Okay. We're around like 170-ish FPS, at least running around here. Still seems to be GPU limited primarily rather than CPU. And let's run on in a little bit. Okay, enemies up there, but I've got an SMG, so there's not going to be anything we're doing about that. Let's try to get in close with the SMG. Ah, I'm getting shot from behind. That is not what we want. Okay. Okay, that went really well for me. The good thing is we were getting 173 FPS, so I can't blame it on the performance. Let's go ahead and go to FSR performance on 1440p though, because I'm actually curious if we're going to start hitting like CPU limitations if I go that aggressive on the upscale. Oh, well, we're on 180 something FPS. Pretty interesting. CPU is working pretty hard. I was staring at my CPU usage. That is unfair. How dare the enemy shoot me while I'm staring at my CPU usage? I was going to say there's some threads going up over 80%, so it's possible we're starting to run into some sorts of limitations on that. I do want to go down to the medium settings, though. Now, again, not every setting necessarily applies perfectly without a restart, but most settings do. And we can see that now I go over 200 FPS. Again, that relieves burden on both the CPU and GPU by bringing down the graphic settings here a little bit. And I actually want to switch back to native 1440p. Now, the reason is we're testing out the motivation on this video is we're testing out how accurate were the system requirements list. And the system requirements list, if I switch back to that for a second, promise that 1440p should be good for 144 FPS at the medium settings on the 7900 XTX. So let's go ahead and see how that goes. So we're now at 1440p medium settings, at least the ones that apply without a restart. And we are currently at 160 FPS. So it does seem to be the case that we are getting over the FPS that they promised. I'm not really paying attention to what I'm doing here. I'm just running out in the open and getting shot, so that's good. Seems like there's an enemy in this direction shooting at me. There's an enemy parachuting down right there. But I have an SMG, which is not quite the ranged weapon for this sort of thing. I see a bunch of enemies over here, though. Can I sneak up behind them? Probably not. Okay, got that one, but then the other guy got me. All right, 160-ish FPS. All right, I think that's good testing on the 7900 XTX. The last thing we have left on the system requirements to check is Ultra++, which promises that an RTX 5080 can deliver 4K high settings, high refresh rate with DLSS. And if you use multi-frame generation, should be able to push 4K to 40 plus, but frame generation in a competitive game, not really my thing, but let's switch over to the 5080 anyway and see what happens. All right, we are on the 5080, and this should be native 4K Ultra settings. Let's go ahead and double check. So we're on Ultra settings, we have no resolution scaling turned on, and we are at 4K. So let's go ahead and benchmark this for a little bit, and then we'll try DLSS and all that and see how that goes. Is there a vehicle out here or anything? I did choose an engineer this time, so I could do something if there's a vehicle. Of course, I can still get shot in the face, so there's always that. Now, let's see. I don't think I'm not gonna get resurrected here, am I? I don't think so. All right, let's go ahead and respawn. So we're getting around 90-ish FPS at 4K native resolution, but we could also try out some DLSS and see how that goes. So DLSS, let's go ahead and try that out. First with resolution scaling, and then I guess we'll try out some frame gen, even though it's a multiplayer title. Let's shoot straight for DLSS performance. I do think that with the latest DLSS models, I honestly get 4K output, especially in a competitive game. DLSS performance makes a lot of sense. Looks like we're up to around 150 FPS or so. Let's try to actually get into a little bit of gameplay. That was an enemy. Anyway, but yeah, around 150 FPS or so, which honestly, that's pretty good right there. Obviously, we could just go with that. But of course, we could also do frame generation. Now, the issue with frame generation is it is not going to make the game more responsive. Let's see, do I have my latency overlay up here? So I think I just kicked on my latency overlay in the top right corner, except is it not going to actually monitor the latency? Ah, that's obnoxious. Oh, well. Wait, is it just because, is reflex not kicked on? I know that your reflex tags oftentimes need to be kicked on for the latency monitor to work. Where's our advanced settings? Reflex, it is enabled, but okay, wasn't monitoring latency. Well, anyway, we'll kick on some frame gen. But the point is that frame gen does not increase the responsiveness of the game, which is the main reason you generally want a high frame rate in a multiplayer title. Anyway, let's crank it up to 4x and just watch the number go up. All right. The 1% lows don't report correctly to this software when using NVIDIA's newest frame generation, so do keep that in mind. But we're getting 300 and something FPS. So do you get 240 FPS plus using multi-frame generation at 4K Ultra using a 5080? The answer is yes. I would probably not keep the frame gen on though, just because it does not make me more effective at playing the multiplayer game, which is why I want the high frame rates. And with it off, I'm still getting a high frame rate. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. So I'm going to go ahead and back off on the frame gen. What else should we test, though, while we're here? Apparently, I can test getting shot in the back while I change graphics settings. Turns out I'm pretty effective at that. Maybe a teammate will revive me while I change the graphics settings. Now, let's try out 1440p resolution. So let's go DLSS off. And then let's go to native 1440p. So native 1440p, except I need to actually click yes. Native 1440p Ultra on the 5080. I got shot again. Will I get saved? Let's find out. I'm getting around 170 FPS while laying on the ground dead, though. So that's always good. There's a medic that's about to get maybe revived. Revive? No revive. Squad mate? Oh, he's getting shot. Oh man, they didn't see the enemy. Okay, we're gonna res. However, around 160 FPS, so there's that. All right, so 1440p while actually alive and running through a building. I will say graphics-wise, the game looks nice. Some of the interiors, like the lighting's not like super impressive and stuff like that. But when you just run around playing the multiplayer game, it looks nice and performs pretty dang well. So there is that. Anyway, 160-ish FPS while running around. Let's go ahead and adjust the graphics settings while there's nothing happening. And go down to maybe upscaling DLSS quality on the 1440p output. See if that gets us to around 200. Yeah, it looks like 200 or so, depending on exactly what's happening on screen. Are there any enemies around? Let's see. I'm getting shot from somewhere. Where am I getting shot from? That's an interesting question. I do see that B is getting taken down. So perhaps I should go assist at B. Get to Bravo, guys. We can't lose the match. Well, we can, and I think we will. But there's an enemy right there, so that's good. I think my gameplay is getting worse as the video goes, so that's good. At least I'm not getting better. We wouldn't want that. Okay, it also says that we could test out high settings and such, but honestly, guys, I think we've got enough data for the video. Realistically, what are my conclusions here? We could actually play the game just fine on a 1070, and the minimum requirements actually seem to be overstated. All of the other requirements, again, seem to be delivering better performance than what they listed. I think the one place that it's definitely you need to think about is the CPU side of things, especially on an older CPU. I do think that that's where people could run into some trouble. So while the 1070 was doing just fine, I think if I paired it with a CPU from that time period, we'd have a little bit more trouble. So that's definitely something to consider, is the CPU side of things, especially on an older CPU. And if you're trying to chase super high frame rates, I do think you kind of need a higher end CPU. That being said, the CPU performance does seem to scale a bit with the graphic settings. So going down to the low settings does help the CPU performance a bit. And that is a good thing. Okay, so I think that's it. Are the system requirements for real? I think for the most part, yeah, it looks about right. And the minimum GPUs, I think you could actually go lower, which is pretty cool. Game seems to run well and look good enough for a multiplayer game. In fact, I think its visual to performance ratio is quite good. I have seen games that look better, but they perform a lot worse. And I've seen the games that look about like this and also perform a lot worse. Hard to draw direct conclusions to things like the recent open beta on Call of Duty, but I've got to say I'm having more fun with this game, and I think it looks a little bit better, and I think it performs at least as well, if not better. So there's that. Anyway, that's my thoughts. Hope all of you have an excellent day.